It's the spring of 1994, and a young man working at an investment firm, we'll call him Jeff, was given an assignment by his supervisor. He was asked to study the commercial potential of the internet. Now, Jeff did a lot of research, but he came across a line that really stuck out to him. He read in a journal that web usage was growing by 2,300%. Now, to some that may have been interesting, to others that may have been informative, but to Jeff, that was inspiring. And years later, Jeff Bezos said that was his wake-up call. Why? He said that things just don't grow that fast. He said it was highly unusual. You see, Jeff saw more than numbers. He saw scenarios. He saw opportunities. He saw stories of how he could turn business on its head and change the face of business forever. And boy, did he. So why is it then that Jeff Bezos and a few others, compared to all the other individuals, saw that information, experienced phenomenal success? Well, Jeff Bezos actually answers that question. He says very simply, human beings aren't really good at understanding numbers. Now, to communicators, to cultivators, this is a very sobering fact. That means that our audience will not be comprised of individuals who think like Jeff Bezos. So with that in mind, we have to be really intentional about how we approach audiences if we have a novel idea based on data. And it's this: people won't understand the numbers you say until they connect to the stories at play. People won't understand the numbers you say until they connect to the stories at play. It's like turning a light on in a dark room. When you understand the stories behind the data, they offer insight and they illuminate paths and spark inspiration and ultimately cause transformation. But you have to get to that point. So using the framework of storytelling, what I like to do with you is to share 2 techniques that can help you to turn your ideas to action, to go beyond the cold hard facts and inspire individuals from the heart. The first technique is how to create a data point of view, and the second is how to make data emotional. Okay. Now, how many times have you heard the expression, the data speaks for itself? I've heard it many times, you probably have too. And it's true. Data is all about what has happened, so it speaks to the past. Data is about what is, so it speaks to the present. But listen, only you can talk about what the future will be. So what data have you uncovered that you have shaped a crystal new vision or idea about the future? Well, if you have that, I want to be able to help you to be able to articulate that. If you want to affect people's thinking and more importantly, their actions, you have to take them from the border of what is and bring them into the land of what could be. And this technique can actually help you do just that. You're going to have to use problem-solving skills, critical thinking, and you have to be creative. And when I say creative, don't get scared. I don't mean get creative with the numbers, right? Data is data, facts are facts. What I mean is, after you make your analysis, after you've really come to an epiphany perhaps about what you have studied, you need to get creative as to what takes place afterwards, the direction you want to send the organization into. Because that, my friends, is the difference between being a contributor and a cultivator. You see, a contributor is all about what is or what was. A cultivator is all about what could be. And so if you want to make the difference in your organization, you want to be able to point them in the right direction based on your assessment. So it's time to understand what a data point of view is. If you're familiar with Nancy Duarte, she wrote a book a few years back called Data Story, and I highly recommend it. In that book, she teaches a technique called a data point of view. And this is a great way to introduce your idea in any conversation, presentation, or communication. In fact, you can use it as a headline. It's an efficient way to elicit interest. And in data point of view, it's essentially just one statement comprised of 2 things. The first is your recommendation. The second are the stakes. So what's a recommendation? Well, again, it's your point of view as to what needs to happen next, right? We've done the analysis. Here's what I think should happen next. The second is when we talk about the stakes. Expressing the stakes essentially talks about the benefits of your idea or the inherent risks that are associated to it. So how do you articulate a point of view? Well, with a noun, an action verb, and a measurable outcome. Now, measurable outcomes are really important because essentially the measurable outcome is what we tell the world it will be like once we put into action our recommendation. So it's very, very important that we get that right, and that always comes at the end of the statement. The noun and the action verb are changeable, so one can go first and then the other. So what I'm going to do with you is show you an example of what is not a data point of view and what is a data point of view. All right, check it out. Fix our online job site. Friends, that is not a data point of view. It vaguely tells us what to do and without any measurable outcomes. However, changing the candidate experience and submission process could increase applicants by 20%. Now that is a data point of view. It opens up with a powerful action verb, right? Provides a specific noun and lets us know what's at stake. And what is at stake? Well, the opportunity to increase our talent pool by 20%. Now, believe me, it takes work to boil down our idea to one statement, but it is well worth it when it comes to a leading line in your presentation. Now, Dorothy makes a very special note about the action verb. She stresses that the action verb is probably the most important word in your statement. And the reason is because when you express the action verb, what you are telling your audience to do is, listen, we need to commit this way, right? Is what you're asking your audience to do to be able to benefit from the measurable outcomes. So you need to be really intentional about the words you use, because that will set the tone or the pace of what happens next. Okay, number 2, that focuses on making data emotional. We have to be a little bit more creative when it comes to expressing facts. It's more than numbers. It's about making people feel the numbers. But in order to do that, you really have to understand your audience. Why do I have to understand my audience? Well, listen, they are the most important person in a conversation, presentation, or communication. Why? Because it is your audience that will decide whether or not your idea goes anywhere. So you have to ensure that that statement that you make, whether it's emotional data or even your data point of view, is written with your audience in mind. If you don't, your idea will go no further than your lips, no higher than the ceiling. So make sure you speak in an audience-centric way. Okay, someone who was really, really good at that was Florence Nightingale. Let's talk about her. In the book, Making Numbers Count, Chip Heath and Carla Starr highlight Nightingale's ability to use data effectively. In fact, she was what's called an emotional storyteller, used emotional numbers in her storytelling. In the book, it highlights that after the Crimean War, the British had strategic success, but they had disastrous outcomes as relates to their soldiers, especially in military hospitals. The military hospitals were rampant with neglect and infection, and it was a terrible situation. In fact, the Times of London did somewhat of an expose, and they went on to say that there is not even linen to make bandages for the wounded who are left to expire in agony. Terrible situation. Nightingale, a very bright, inspiring young woman, only in her early 30s, recruited fellow nurses and volunteers to turn that situation around. The book goes on to say that she had in mind as relates to her mission beyond the Crimean War. She knew that she had to change the hearts and the minds of leadership in order to effect change, because if that didn't take place, the same neglect, the same inefficiencies would continue. So she needed to articulate her message in a way that was going to move who were largely change-averse individuals in a different direction so the soldiers would benefit. She knew her audience, and so she not only knew what to say, but more importantly, she knew how to say it. Now, she had some pretty interesting information at her fingertips. The book goes on to relate that she had some data around military hospitals compared to civilian hospitals. In peacetime now, British soldiers aged 25 to 35 in army hospitals had a mortality rate of 19 per 1,000, comparing with 11 per 1,000 in regular London hospitals. It's interesting, right? So how did Nightingale make it emotional? Well, she went on record and said the following: "It is as criminal to have mortality of 19 per 1,000 when that of civil life is only 11 per 1,000, as it would be to take 1,100 men per year and shoot them." Whoa. That statement went viral and Twitter wasn't even around. Why? Because executing soldiers is as emotional as it gets. I mean, think of how it would have landed if Nightingale went out and said, "Hey, listen, we're losing around, 19 per 1,100 soldiers per year due to neglect." No, that wouldn't have landed well, because when you lose something, it's something you can't find. When you talk about executing your own soldiers, you realize that there's a problem. And you know what? People listened to Nightingale, and changes were made. And soon, the mortality rate began to drop, and things began to turn around for the soldiers, thanks to Nightingale. Nightingale is identified as the modern nurse, but I would say she's a true cultivator, because she was able to change people's minds. So the lesson here is that if you want people to take things to heart, reach the heart with your data. There's so much more that I really want to tell you, but time won't permit. So I just want you to remember these two things. Use a data point of view, that one-liner, that executive headline that gets straight to the heart of your idea, and hopefully will elicit the 3 words that every communicator wants to hear afterwards. Tell me more. The second is use emotional numbers. Use them in a way that's meaningful, that's powerful. Don't overdo it, but do it in a way that it moves people from the heart so that they go ahead and take action. Look, if you remember anything, remember this. Data is the truth. Stories are the truth in action. Use data stories to inspire people to change. Thanks so much for listening.